So we're starting our series on gratefulness in our lead up to Thanksgiving. And I feel like this is not scientific in any means. I haven't done the research necessary. But I feel like there is no more time than right now that it's difficult to be grateful. Like I feel like there's no time in history where we have at once had more to be grateful for and had a more difficult time actually being grateful. I feel like there's this constant comparison that we can easily get into, that you can always see someone who has a nicer house, or you can always see someone who has more well-behaved children. Like you can always see someone who has like the newer game system. You can always see someone who has the nicer car. You can always see someone who you're pretty sure has a fuller bank account than you. Like, isn't this kind of the world that we live in? There's always that comparison, and there's always someone that has more. Gratitude isn't going to be something that happens if you just talk about it for a week. It's much more difficult than that to grow. And so we're actually going to talk about it for 4 weeks. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk about gratefulness. And frankly, even that is not going to be enough. Like, even if you come here every week and you hear just earth-shattering truths from Scripture from me and David, like we are bringing the Word, hearing those things is still not going to be enough. There is something about your emotional response to things, and gratefulness is that. It's kind of an emotional response to something that happens, that in order to address them, you need to kind of address them indirectly. You can't just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be grateful. And then, from then on, you're grateful. That's not, like, for anyone who's ever, like, wrestled with other emotional struggles of, like, maybe you've wrestled with anger, you can't be like, I'm not going to be angry. And then when you start to get angry, you're just like, nope, not angry anymore. That's not how it works. If you've ever wrestled with stress and when you start to feel those pressure climbing on, you're like, nope, I don't feel stressed anymore. And then just all the weight rolls off your shoulder because you don't feel stressed anymore. Is that how anyone's emotions in the room work? Can you just be like, no, I don't want to feel those bad emotions, I'm done with them? No, it takes harder, more time to deal with those things. And sometimes one of the difficulty with Christians is that we shirk the hard work. We don't do the long path of actually having our hearts and our minds reformed. We just pretend like we're actually happy. Like maybe you're bitter with another member of the church. And instead of actually having it out with them and talking with them, you smile at their face and you act like you're both friends. Because instead of doing the hard work of getting over your frustration or anger, it's easier to just smile at them. Maybe you feel crushed under the weight of like sadness or struggles or different things going on in your life. And instead of actively dealing with some of the emotional struggles, you just instead say, no, I'm not going to feel those things anymore. I'm going to smile when I'm at church. And none of us would have any idea that there's that much weight pressing down on you as soon as you walk out of these doors. Aren't we really good at smiling at church? And not actually doing the hard work. And the issue is, that just doesn't work. Pretending your negative emotions don't exist doesn't make them go away. In fact, in a lot of ways, it lets them fester and it lets them grow. But there is something that you can do. How you feel is affected by what you choose to continue to think and what you choose to do. How you continue to let yourself think and the things that you continue to do. And so for the next 4 weeks, David, this is a shock to you, but we're going to give you homework every week. So David, you need to think of things for the next 3 weeks. But we're going to give you homework. And I know none of the students are like, hooray, homework. I know no one, maybe one of you is. Good job. None of us are really excited about homework, but instead of learning like 13 facts about the Civil War that maybe you can use to get like a point in a trivia game someday, we're going to learn how to make ourselves more grateful, which has the ability to affect the way that you live each and every day of your life, has the ability to help you draw closer to God. And so this week we're going to focus on a story of gratefulness from Luke 17. If you want to turn with me, it's Luke 17 verses 12 through 19, where Jesus heals some dudes. And one of the guys, he heals 10 people, one of the guys ends up being grateful. Here's what it says. Let's read together. He was going into a particular village, he being Jesus, and he had met 10 men with violent skin diseases who stayed at some distance from him. Jesus, Master, they called out loudly, have pity on us. And when Jesus saw them, he said to them, go and show yourselves to the priests. And they went, and they were healed. One of them, seeing that he had been healed, turned back and gave glory to God at the top of his voice, kind of like the song that we sang earlier. He fell on his face in front of Jesus' feet and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. There were 10 of you healed, weren't there? Responded Jesus. Where are the 9? Is it really the case that the only one who had the decency to give God glory was the foreigner? Get up and be on your way, he said to him. Your faith has saved you. This is the word of the Lord. Jesus saw these 10 people with skin diseases, which at that time they would have just been called lepers. Someone was reading, we have a small group before this, you guys have heard me talk about it. Someone was reading their version before and they said people with leprosy, and I really like that people first language, but they wouldn't have gotten that. They would have just been defined by the fact that they had boils on their skin, or they had cuts on their skin that wouldn't heal, or they had a rash that wouldn't go away. Like, these people would just be seen as leopards. And not only would they be sick, but they would be social outcasts. They probably would have been in some state of financial ruin because they wouldn't be able to have a job or be able to upkeep themselves. Like, they would have been distanced from everyone else. And what Jesus does is he sees them and he sends them back to the priests so that we can be reintegrated into society once they're healed. The way that leprosy worked in that time is this is like pre-medicine. They don't have hospitals they can go to, and so there isn't a doctor, there's a priest, which, hey, we're not doing that again. If you have a medical illness, don't bring it to me. I don't know what to do with it. But this was like a thing that you would keep a rash from spreading throughout the entire group. The way that you would keep these things from spreading is you would separate them from people, and then once you felt like they were gone, once you felt like your hand, foot, mouth had gone away, you would go to the priest, and he would look at your hands and feet and mouth and make sure, and if you were healed, you could get reintegrated into society. You could go back to your family. You could go back to your job. You could go back to your friends. You didn't have to be a social outcast anymore. And so when Jesus says, go back to the priest, that's why. It's so that they can be reintegrated in society. And what's interesting here is he doesn't heal them immediately. Like, it's not like Jesus heals them on the spot and then they walk. They're healed along the way. And we can come up with a million reasons why Jesus would do it like this. Maybe he wanted them to obey before they were healed. Maybe he wanted them to be farther away, so the showing of gratitude was closer by. I was reminded by one of my students this week that sometimes Jesus probably does something because he wanted to do it that way. And we spend so long trying to nitpick over what the deeper reason is. Maybe Jesus just felt like healing them along the way, and since he's Jesus, he can do that. And so they're healed on the way. They start walking on their way, and they become healed. And I don't know if you can imagine this, but like just while you're walking along the way, you see maybe the guy walking next to you, and you see that his face, the lesion is starting to heal shut. And then you look down at your own arms, and you realize that maybe like the boils that you had or the rash that you had has gone away. And you have this moment of like understanding that something amazing has happened to you. And so what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to go to the priest, and the priest will be like, yeah, that's gone, go wash up, and then you can go back with your family. You can go reintegrate into society. But one of the people, while he's walking, realizes that something great has happened to him. And instead of continuing on his way, he walks back, and he throws himself at Jesus' feet, and he says, thank you. That's gratefulness. Like, really simply saying thank you. That right there, recognizing that something great has happened and saying thank you, that's all that gratefulness is. And I feel like some of the time we don't really understand gratefulness or thankfulness because gratefulness and thankfulness require someone to be grateful or thankful to. If you're grateful, you need to be grateful to someone. If you're thankful, you need to be thankful to someone. It's different than just feeling fortunate. It's different than just feeling pleased with your life. Like, I don't know if you guys did this when you get together for Thanksgiving, where you go around the table and you say one thing that you're thankful for. And I'm thinking back on my experience, and a lot of that wasn't thankfulness. It was me feeling fortunate. It was me feeling happy that I had a thing and me enjoying a thing, and those are great. I should be happy when I have nice things. I should be pleased that there are good things in my life. But it didn't take that next step very often to be grateful, because gratefulness requires that I be grateful to someone, that I be thankful to someone. Christians take mere appreciation, mere feeling fortunate, and we take it one step further, and we apply that gratefulness to God. And most of the time, you got to do like this little mental gymnastics to do that, right? Because this guy was healed directly by Jesus, and so he could say thank you directly to Jesus. And sometimes you might have those things happen in your life where there is something that happens in your life that is directly from Jesus. He can heal you, and you can be grateful that he healed you. That's an easy connection. It might be that he was able to change your mood or give you peace or give you comfort or give you security. And in that moment, you can go directly back to Jesus and say thank you. But most of the time, the things that we're grateful to God for are things that came indirectly, aren't they? Like maybe you're grateful for your car. It's not that you prayed and then poof, there was a car in your driveway. No, you know that you worked hard to afford that car, didn't you? Maybe you're grateful for your friends. And again, it's not like directly God like made those friends appear in your life. You know that sometimes you put in hard work to maintain those friendships and build trust there. Maybe you're grateful for like a tablet, and you know that tablets don't grow on trees, and so it's not that this was part of natural creation. We need to do some of this mental gymnastics and realize that most of the time when we're grateful to God, we're grateful for something larger than that actual thing that we're grateful for. We're grateful that he would build such a good world that these things could exist. Like, God, I am so thankful that you would build such a good world that people could be so creative and innovative that a PS5 could exist. Like, God, I'm so grateful that you would build such a good world that friends could exist, that good flavors could exist, that good food could exist. God, I know that you didn't cook this meal for me, but I am so grateful that you made a world where someone could cook this meal for me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's Christian gratefulness, is finding ways to be grateful to God for things that he might have given us indirectly. And frankly, there are so many good joys in this world, aren't there? Like, I am not denying that there is things in the world that are not great. There are things in this world that are evil. There are things in this world that break you down. But there are so many good pleasures and joys, like clothes that make you feel good about yourself, a car that you like, friends who are caring and supportive for you, little moments in a tumultuous day where you experience peace and security. That feeling of satisfaction when you help somebody. Good food. Maybe you're a grown-up and you enjoy like a beer at the end of a day. Maybe you're not a grown-up and you enjoy a Capri Sun right now. Who doesn't love a Capri Sun? Like, these are good joys that we have in this world. Maybe you like watching sports or playing video games, or like that experience of being under a warm blanket when it's cold out. Isn't that like for real one of the best experiences in the world? Has anyone ever turned on the AC and has anyone been under a blanket in air conditioning? Come on now. You know that you paid doubly for that. You bought a blanket and paid for the house to be cold, but it was worth it. Because that moment of being cold and under a blanket is one of the best. Like, maybe you enjoy puzzles or families or being active or like figuring out and solving a problem. There are so many good things in this world for us to be grateful for us to enjoy and then actively turn back to God and say, thank you. But the reality is that having great things or great experiences or great friendships doesn't make you grateful. It's actually true to say that nothing can make you grateful. Only you make you grateful. Nothing that happens in your life is going to magically make you grateful. The way that you respond to it will make you grateful. And we see that in the story, right? 10 people had something miraculous happen to them. 10 people had something happen to them that is so far out of the realm of possibilities that most of us wouldn't even think to pray for it. Like, if you have a rash, normally you wouldn't even think to pray, hey, God, can you make this rash go away? Maybe some of you would. A lot of us probably wouldn't. They have this moment where something miraculous happens in their life, and 1 out of the 10 finds themselves to be grateful. Even supernatural, miraculous healings cannot make you grateful. You could have every break and every privilege. You could have everything go your way. You could have God show up in your world in a powerful way to change your life and transform it. And that could still not make you grateful, because things don't make you grateful. The way you respond makes you grateful. Because that's what gratefulness is. It's a habit. It's a way that you respond to the world. And that's what we try and grow as Christians, is a habit, an attitude of gratefulness. That we try and grow that so that our first reaction isn't, finally I'm catching a break. It isn't, oh man, I've worked so hard for this. I'm glad my hard work is paying off. It is even something like, man, I'm so glad that I can have this thing. Those aren't our Christian responses. Our Christian responses are we enjoy the thing and then we say thank you for it. And you might not be able to change your emotional response just by focusing on being more grateful. But you can change the way you emotionally respond to things by changing the thoughts that you think and the things that you do. And so here's your homework for this week. This is what we're going to talk about. Here's a thing that you can do and a thought that you can think about it that will start to make you more grateful. Step 1, do something you love and enjoy. Kids, are you listening? Step 1, do something you love and enjoy. This is the first step of being grateful to God. So if later on you I want to go to the park, and your parents are like, I don't know if we have time to go to the park, you can be like, it'll help me be grateful to God. Step 1 of being grateful is deeply, deeply enjoying the world that you live in. Doing the things that you love to do, that you appreciate. And it's not just about fun, it's also about like things that make you feel good about yourself. Things that make you feel accomplished. Doing those things, appreciating the world that we have, is the first step to being grateful to God. And the second is recognizing where they came from and saying thank you. That's going to be your homework this week. I know it's real hard. You need to go do something you love and then say thank you for it. Because that is the first step to growing gratefulness. And for some reason, doing things that we love can be hard for Christians, can't it? Going out of your way to do something that's just for you can sometimes feel selfish. Getting something that's special or nice or expensive just for yourself can feel like you're wasting it. You might be so aware that there are people in this world who are struggling to stay alive that you feel bad. You feel survivor's guilt about just what you have. Like, Christians can really get caught up in struggling to enjoy the world that we live in because it feels like it's not good enough. It feels like just having fun is not good enough. We also need to do something else. Just doing something that you enjoy is not good enough. We also need to do something. Or maybe it feels selfish to focus on us. And I want you to imagine for a second God's perspective on that. Like for real, think about that. Has anyone ever gotten someone a really good present? Not just you stopped at Target for 5 minutes before the party, but you thought about it, and you picked out a present, and the thing that you were most excited for Christmas was watching someone open your present. Has anyone been there? Like, you knew you did good, and you were excited to watch them open it, and their eyes light up, and them to be very excited, and you didn't even care what you got that Christmas, because you were excited to see them be excited for it. Now imagine you give them that gift. And your grandson opens up the present and he's like, Grandma, because I love you so much, I am never going to play with this toy because that feels selfish. I'm going to put this toy on the shelf, and every time I see that toy and I don't play with it, I'm going to be reminded of how much I love you, Grandma. I love you more than I love that truck. I am never going to play with it. Like, imagine you're at a friend's party and you know that you got them like the perfect comic book that they're going to be really excited for. And they are like, friend, thank you for this comic book. I am not going to read it. Instead, I'm going to burn it right here. And with this sacrifice, you're going to know that I love you more than I love this comic book, because for me to read this comic book would be selfish. And I love you more than I love this comic book. And those sound like ridiculous reactions, right? But isn't that actually sometimes exactly what we do with the good things that God gave us? That it feels like it's too selfish to enjoy them. That it feels like other people have less, and so how can we be happy with sometimes having more? That it feels like I shouldn't do something that's just fun. And we find ourselves in these patterns of like, God, I love you so much I'm not going to laugh when I pray. I love you so much I'm going to quit my soccer team so that I can make room for more church activities. Like, these are real, I have these conversations with students, and I'm like, no, you can still do soccer. Like, God, I love you so much that I'm going to pull back from this so that I can just focus on how much I love you. And God's like, no, those are good gifts. Those are things that I gave you. And good gifts aren't meant to sit on the shelf. Good gifts are meant to be enjoyed and shared. And that is the life that God gave. Like, the life that God gave you is a good gift that is meant for you to be enjoying and taking deep pleasure in and sharing. The first step to growing gratitude is to take deep appreciation in the life that you have. Enjoying that. I don't know if you've ever been here. Like, you've served someone and you felt good about yourself, and then you've been like, oh, well, now my serving is selfish because I enjoyed the feeling of serving. No! Enjoy the fact that you like serving someone. Isn't God so good that he made you in a way that you like helping people? Like, take deep appreciation in the fact that you were able to figure out a problem. Take enjoyment in like a good meal, even if you know that someone else doesn't have that good meal. We need to be people who take deep appreciation in the world that we have, in the life that we lead, because we know it for what it is, a good gift from a good Father. And that doesn't mean that we turn a blind eye to things that go wrong in the world. Because as much as this world is a good gift from God, it's also broken by sin. Like, really broken by sin sometimes, isn't it? And it is not that you need to just focus on, it's okay to feel negative about negative things that happen. Jesus doesn't walk into the temple where the money lenders are taking advantage of people. He's like, smiley day to you guys. So thankful you're taking advantage of people. High five. No, he's mad at bad things that are happening. Jesus doesn't return from his prayer to find his disciples sleeping, and he's like, so glad you guys got some good rest. I know you've been tired lately. Glad that you were able to really roll back some of those Z's. That's great. No, he's upset That his disciples, like, it's okay to feel negative over negative things. But the key to Christian gratefulness is to not let those moments of brokenness steal the joy that actually exists in this world. To not let the things that you see on the news, to not let the things that a bully is saying about you, to not let the hardships that are resting on some of your family steal real moments of joy from you. Because the fact that some things are bad doesn't stop other things from being good. And if you've had a really hard week, if you've had a week where it feels like everyone has been down on you, that shouldn't steal the joy of a single compliment from someone who loves you in the middle of it. Like if you've had a long day, that shouldn't steal the joy of like sneaking away and eating a brownie at the end of it to make it just a little bit better. We can be people who take delight in things, and then we take the next step and we say thank you to God for it. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't need to use your big words. Like you don't need to do anything special. Like this guy who's referred to just as a foreign leper, just returns and throws himself at Jesus' feet and says, thank you. Or did you notice the words he said? It just says he thanked him. That was it. He didn't have to break out his thesaurus to use his big words for God. He just said thank you to God. And bear in mind, this guy, he had something amazing happen for him, right? Like he was healed. He had something great happen in his life. Did that solve all of his problems? No. He still is probably broke. He still probably is estranged from his family and friends. He's still a foreigner in a land where they don't like him. And systems and people's reactions to him are built to make him not succeed in that system. Like, he still has all of those problems, but he does not allow those things on the horizon, to sap the joy of this moment that his God healed him. And he returns to Jesus despite all of those things. Not because he doesn't know that those exist, he knows that those are there, but because those things cannot steal the joy of this one wonderful moment. And he returns and he falls at his feet and he says, thank you. Because pretty frankly, isn't that the point of gifts? Gifts build relationships. When we go back to God and we say thank you for the good gifts, it makes us closer with him. I feel like there's nowhere in our lives where this is more poignant, more distilled than the moment when you realize all that your parents did for you. Do you guys remember this moment? Because as a kid, you don't think about it, and that's okay. And then you hit a moment where maybe you had kids or you go to college and you think about things, and you have this moment where you're like, oh man, my parents did a lot. And no amount of thanking them is ever going to be enough. But when you went back and you said thank you, it made you feel closer to them. And parents, have you had this moment where maybe you're still waiting on it? Sorry, maybe I'm talking about a future hope for some of you, and you're like, someday my kid will say thank you for the fact that we went through 6 cups this morning because they didn't want the purple cup. Maybe some of you have had this moment where your kids have come back to you and just said thank you. Didn't you feel closer to them in that moment? Didn't you feel your relationship knit tighter? It's because that's what gifts do. Parents don't do all those things so that our kids love them. We don't give gifts so that we can manipulate people into being closer to us. But gifts actually have this process where they tie people closer together. And God has given us so many good gifts so that when we return to say thank you, we are closer to God through it. And here's your hint. That's the whole point. The whole point of our Christian life is so that we can be close to God. The goal is not so that we get a forever life. It's so that you get a forever life with God. The goal is not so that God gives you good gifts, it's so that you can have those good gifts and enjoy them with God. The whole point of our Christian life is this witness with God. And we know that the light of our God shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And that is true for the light of Jesus in his death and resurrection and in the salvation that he gives you. But that's also true of not letting big things steal your joy of the little things that God has given you. The little joys and the little pleasures that he has given you, so we can return to him and say thank you. And find ourselves to be a closer daughter to him. Find ourselves to feel like a closer co-worker. To find him to feel like a closer father or caregiver. To find him to be the one who we worship and adore. The whole goal of the Christian life is so that you can share it with God. And when we take the time to enjoy good things and thank him for them, we get to share those moments with him. In a very real way, we get to sprinkle little bits of that forever life with God right here and now. That you're not just feeling peaceful because you're doing a puzzle with your spouse. But in gratefulness, you get to enjoy that moment with God. That you're not just thankful that after a long day, there's a good football game on. But in gratefulness, you get to enjoy that game with God. That you're not just thankful for friends who stood up for you and have your back. But in gratefulness, you get to enjoy those friendships with God. This is the point of Christian life, and gratitude becomes a central aspect of it. And it creates this feedback loop of when I enjoy things more deeply and I thank God for them more, I find that I enjoy things more deeply and I thank God for them more and I enjoy things. Have you guys noticed this? That when you build this habit of gratefulness, you start to enjoy things more and you start to thank God more and enjoy things more and thank God more. And you end up in this place where you get to enjoy a life that you live with God, not because there's nothing wrong in your life. There are things wrong in your life, but because those moments don't get to steal the joy of the good things that he's given you. And there is no place where this joy is more greatly known than here at the table in our salvation. That we know that by the death and resurrection of our Lord, we are given the ability to draw close to God. Without this moment, there is no with God. There is no gratefulness. There is nothing to be grateful for. This is the moment where we get to draw close to him. That in his death and resurrection, he invites us to the table as family. That we can join him and say thanks.